Yo, 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 what up, everybody? This is your boy, LaShawn Sugar Ray Marston, host of The Sugar Ray Show, here with another phenomenal episode. Today, we got a dear brother of mine, man, a dear brother to so many, not just humans, but plants and animals as well. Uh, Brother Gil Lopez, extreme urban farmer, environmental activist, man, master composter. He does so much on so many levels. He's been doing it for a long time. I'm gonna read his bio, let you guys know who he is and why you should be listening to him. Then we're gonna get to it.
Good evening.
Gil Lopez, co-founder of Smiling Hogs Head Ranch here in Long Island City, environmental educator, socially engaged artist, land and water protector. Gil currently works at the nonprofit Big Reuse. He also serves on the Queens Solid Waste Advisory Board, the Western Queens CLT Advisory Board, and is on the Smiling Hogs Head Ranch Board of Directors. He recently completed the Urban Design Forum's 2022-23 Forefront Fellowship and participated in a 6-week artist residency in Denmark in late 2022. In 2020, Gil was honored with the NYC Brownfield Partners Distinguished Service Awards. And in 2018, he was acknowledged by the NYC Food Policy Center at Hunter as 40 under 40. In addition to these honors, Gil has a long record of direct action activism, which has resulted in the creation of community gardens, opening of composting sites, and shaming of politicians and corporations for social and environmental harm. As I told you, Gil is the man. Gil Lopez, man, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's been a beautiful day. Just coming off teaching 2 workshops at 2 different Queens libraries. One was right around the corner in Astoria, up at the Astoria Library, and then out in Corona, after school programs, making seed balls and making mushrooms. Yeah.
Busy. So let's start there. Let's start right there. How did you, and at what point did you start developing these relationships with the libraries to facilitate these workshops that you do? How did that happen?
Yeah, so I was it was back in 2011, not long after we started Smiling Hogshead Ranch. There was about 11 of us. A friend of a friend was working with the libraries, got a grant and hired me to facilitate some workshops, help build some gardens at the libraries, open up composting sites. Lynn Serp, she actually ran as the Green Party council person for this district some years ago when she was still here more. That got me into the libraries. I was working there basically full-time on contract for a couple of years or a year and a half. And then now some branch managers still bring me back when they get a little funding.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So let's talk about that. How does that work? Do they have specific workshops that they want you to facilitate, or do in communication you let them know, hey, listen, this is a workshop that's necessary right now. Let me facilitate this. How does that work?
A little of both. It's like the environmental realm. They want environmental topics sometimes for different things, and that's kind of what my specialty is. So I can provide those types of things. I work with all different ages. So that's perfect for the library. They have different time slots where different people can attend, and it's geared towards different folks. So it's been lots of fun.
Nice. What's the reaction from the participants, especially the younger ones? What's the reaction like when you do these workshops?
It's all across the board. There's a lot that has to do with like how their parents are reacting too. Oftentimes kids will want to like touch the soil or hold the worm, or today we filled up a crate with mycelium sawdust and regular sawdust and started that. And now the kids were helping, but then at the second one, I had some worms and the kids were a little squeamish and the parents were like, oh no, yeah, you don't have to touch it. And they didn't have to, but they probably would have if the parent was a little bit more encouraging. So it all depends. Most of the time the kids really are into it though.
Nice. So now let's go back. Let's go way back, as they say, back in the time.
Yes.
Where did you develop this love? Where did you develop this love for the environment, for gardening and all of this stuff? Where did that come from?
Well, I was born in Louisiana down on the bayou and raised in Mississippi in the pine forests. And I just remember playing in the forests and one day the foresters came through and they clear cut a lot of the forest. They high graded it or whatever, which they took everything except for like the little saplings and it took our fort down and everything. I hated corporations that did that ever since. Any businesses that did that type of stuff. And Also, Mr. Rogers. I saw him one time. He went out with his buddy that was a tree doctor. He climbed the tree and cut off the hurting branch and painted the little medicine. I went home and I told my mom I wanted to be a tree doctor.
Wow.
So it comes from a young age, and I feel there's just a calling for me actually to be here in New York. I mean, I came here for, love and money really back in the bubble of 2000 and after 2008 I came in 2010, and ever since I've been here, I feel like I just have to help people who haven't really had a chance to engage with the natural environment because it's been paved over, and they don't see it. And then they've been told that it's one thing and to be like icked out by it, the creepy crawlies and everything, but then not understanding how integral everything, our water, our air, our food, everything we touch, our clothing, our textiles, everything is like dependent on nature itself, and we're wholly part of nature. There's no decision whether we want to be like into nature or not. Like we are natural beings, we're totally into it. Whether we want to like face our destiny and live in our own skin is the choice we have to make, and that skin extends to the skin of the earth in so many ways.
Powerful. So let's go back. So down in, I think you said Louisiana, Mississippi, where they came in and they cut a lot of the forest down. At what point did you realize that you were indeed, because that's hard for a child to grasp, right? Like, I'm one with nature. We are part of nature, right?
Yeah.
At what point, if you can remember, when you realized that you were indeed one with nature?
I mean, the oneness with nature, that's something that like you grapple with. I mean, I feel like as a child, I felt so because I ran around in the woods and in the forest all the time, barefoot even, just whatever, just out in the forest. It's just I was part of it, and then like it was a gradual thing. Like in high school, not only did they mess up my thing in middle school back behind my grandparents' house, but then they started knocking down all types of forests and putting up these like strip malls and parking lots, and everything just changed, and then it was just cars and traffic and consumption, and I was like, I don't know. And there's the whole thing. I guess I graduated from Mississippi State with a degree in landscape architecture, and I ended up going to Florida and practicing for a couple of years. I never got my license, but I practiced under landscape architects, and the work was bullshit. I thought that landscape architecture was like a noble profession, and it could be, but you're employed by the people who are like buying forests and cutting them down and building subdivisions, and you have to design all that shit and make it look pretty, and you have to like figure out what trees you're going to plant after you cut all the trees down, and it's so there's not even, it's like and I had just had a child, and I had needed the money, and had to make the real life decisions in this under this capitalism that we exist within, and it is horrendous. It remains unspeakably horrendous.
No, absolutely. So let's take that and let's go forward, because and we're gonna come back, right? We're gonna do a little back and forth. So you went to school for landscape architecture, right? Now fast forward, you were one of the co-founders in Smiling Hogs Head Ranch, which actually I love. I've been to a lot of farms, a lot of gardens throughout the city, other cities, and I love the layout of Smiling Hogs Head, right? From front to back, I love how it's laid out. Would you say that some of the things you learned in landscape architecture helped you develop that, and even some of the other gardens that you were proud of?
Of course. Landscape architecture was an interesting profession because you kind of had, this idea of the jack of all trades. It's like, if you're going to build something outside, even up to like the whole subdivision, or a memorial, a cemetery, a park, a city plaza. All these things are interrelated. There's so many parts to all that. You have to be in communication and understand what's going on with like the civil engineering, because you don't want to put plants on top of electricity underground or above ground, or sewage or whatever. And just like all these moving parts, the architects, the contractors, the plumbers, the landscapers, the window glazers, everything, like the sun angles and the seasonality, and like microclimates, everything that you learn to like, it's this intersectionality of professions that go into the built world that we all live in every day, but we don't really critique it. It's interesting. Some people like, oh, if you waited tables, you kind of extra critique the wait staff at the restaurant. You used to work retail, so you like extra critique how people treat people coming into the store. I like critique the built environment, and it's like distracting as all get out all the time.
No, that's incredible. That's incredible. So let's stay right there. So, as you are, traveling as your journey and as you're working in different gardens, as you're working in different, communities, what are some things about the layouts, about the built layouts that maybe frustrate you, right? Because I think we're in a time now where everybody thinks they could do it, right? You doing this for a while, you learning from some people who've been doing it for a while. What are some things about the way people are doing it, even the good people, that may frustrate you?
You mean building gardens? People, the way that people,
building gardens and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, for one, I don't know if it frustrates me necessarily, but I do think that there could be more gardens that didn't have individual plots, where there was like more collectively run rules, and that would affect the way that the garden ends up being designed if everyone didn't like need like all access to their little plot. Then you could like, some the priorities of the garden shift and change over time based on who's there and doing what. But the plants itself, as long as you designate a good amount of space to them, you get a good yield.
Mm-hmm. Powerful. So now let's go back now. At what point? So I think, I think there's a difference between just caring about the environment, right, and actually taking steps to be active around protecting the environment, protecting the land, protecting the water, getting your hands dirty, so to speak, by starting to plant your own stuff, build your own gardens. At what point, did you become activated to say, I'm not just going to care about it and feel sad about what's happening. I'm actually going to do as much as I can to improve, our climate, our earth, and things like that. Where did that activation come from, man? At what point did that happen?
There's so much inspiration out there, like people doing radical stuff, and the more I hear about, the more inspired I am of the people that did things before I got on this planet, in places that I never heard of. And just like, there's a lot of precedent, to build on, and inspired by so much. But then like for me, working it out, like as a landscape designer, like one of the early things, this like direct action, it was kind of a prank or whatever. I wanted to like, when you see a new construction building and they have like the green fence and they have the sign and it says what's it going to be. I had one of those. I was living in Orlando at the time, and I wanted to like put up like this rendering of like this beautiful garden and like kind of like this playground and this community space with the farmer's market and like this different stuff going on in this big city lot in the middle of downtown, and just like get everybody super psyched about this thing that was happening when it had just been sitting vacant for sale for like a decade or something, But I didn't end up doing that. I ended up moving to New York City pretty quickly after I conceptualized that. But then like in New York, just seeing what everybody was doing and just like jumping into, I mean, I jumped into a couple demonstrations before Occupy Wall Street, but I just like went down to Zuccotti and like got schooled. And from then on have been empowered and have known other people that kind of are down to help out. So it's building a network and also being knowing what's possible, knowing my rights, played a lot. I was scared that I would get in trouble for this and that, knowing where to draw the line and if I went over that line, what would have to be in place in order to take care of me if I did get detained by the law enforcement officers,
No, that's powerful. That's powerful. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about I mean, if you can, sometimes that if you have been detained, right, like, or for those who you may know who have been detained, what is the right? So let's say someone's detained, you or someone else is detained for doing some of these direct actions, right? And then after detainment, do you move more cautiously, or do you get right back to, now we're gonna keep this thing going the same way we've been doing it?
I think a lot of that's based on individual taste, and to be honest, for me, like the privilege that I carry in my own skin, and knowing what's right for me, because like d- direct action is not just getting arrested.
Yep.
And it's fun, the protests are awesome, but
Mhm.
that's not the culture. That's the rage, and dwelling in that, you get burnt out. So yeah, you could get back out there in the streets, but maybe you don't get arrested next time. Maybe you just support the people. Maybe you start doing some jail support. Maybe you switch roles a little bit. Stay in the game. Stay
Stay in the game.
focused. Be
Yep.
with the strategy. Employ your tactics. Be part of that ecosystem of tactics. Plug yourself in where it seems appropriate for you in that moment. You know, and just keep on trying to stay in that flow. And don't burn yourself out. Don't step too far back. But take space when you need it. It's a delicate balance.
Mhm. No, that's powerful. And I'm glad you mentioned that because personally, you know, as someone who's been arrested since I was a kid, or as someone who's done 3 years in prison, I've never wanted to get arrested, like for doing, being active. Mind you, I have no problem if it ever happened, but I never wanted to put myself in a situation to be like, let's just go get arrested. It's like, whoa, what? Like, I've been locked up. That's no
Yeah.
fun. You know what I mean? It's no fun having those cuffs in your hand, having those officers push you around, disrespect you. I'm like, nah. Now again, clearly, if it's a serious situation and I'm out there, I'm not going to not be me because I'm afraid of being arrested, but I'm also going to be smart enough to know that let me not put myself in that situation if I think that getting arrested is not going to change anything, right? Because a lot of times it doesn't change anything. It doesn't it doesn't move anything forward a lot of times, it's just like people doing it. And I think there's a distinct difference between being active and being reactive, and being a community builder, sustainer of the world, and being someone who just wants to destroy everything. You know what I mean? I think those are two different energies, and I think it's important for each individual to know to identify within themselves, their role, and then to align with people who are going to respect their role and not put them in compromising positions, right?
Yeah.
Um, so thank you for sharing that. So I want to go into something real quick that I'm not even too knowledgeable of. Land and water protection, right? When you speak about that, like, what does that entail? Yeah, what does that entail, and how do you really get deep? Because you're deep into that work. You've done a lot of work around that since I've known you. How did you get into that, and what does that actually entail? Land and water protection work specifically.
Well, for me, that's standing up for the water as a human right, and standing up for water itself as an entity that
Mm,
deserves our respect, because water is life.
mm.
I challenge anyone. I mean, I know Sugar Ray, you know that more than a lot of people on this planet right now, because what day is this? You're like almost done with the
Day 26 and 30 water fast.
water is life, mini Wachoni. And without clean water, we don't exist, or
Right.
we exist in some radical mutated form that is kind of scary to think about. So, all those that don't want to protect the water are actually, because the way that we're going is just the more pollution, the more they're all these the reactionary eco environmentalist folks that are they're reacting against the destruction of land and water. That's like the, there's places that don't have water. Jackson, Mississippi,
Yeah.
Flint, Michigan. Most of the reservations in the southeast of the United States, the southwest of the United States, they don't have water. They have to go somewhere and get it outside of their home.
Crazy.
And you know that's just America. It's happening. The colonial effort, the global colonial effort, is doing this to the entire world right now, in
Yep.
the Amazon, in India, all over the place, in China, in Australia. Every continent is experiencing this. Antarctica is not populated, but it's experiencing what's happening. And that's why we live in the Anthropocene, an epoch of time defined by man's impact upon the earth. And we really don't have much of a decision. I mean, I'm definitely an intersectional activist, but without a planet, we have no women's rights, we have
Nothing.
no equal rights, we have no civil rights, we have no, you know, I guess we'll have no borders finally, but what's but uh, it's crazy, and sometimes, so I often talk about the spectrum of grief, and people go along the spectrum, and oftentimes most of people, we're all in grief because we live under capitalism, which we talked about earlier. It's devastating in every way. But a lot of people are in denial, which is the major part of grief. And then anger comes up when you realize that you've had the wool pulled over your eyes. You get ashamed and angry with yourself even, and then you get angry at the world. And depending on your analysis, you get angry at other people. And it gets crazy. And then there's, all these steps of grief. And that's why I think for people with the privilege of getting arrested to like just go out and plan that, they're like, okay, this is going to be my I'm going to take a little time off work and just spend my time fucking up the program, trying to disrupt business as usual, and just like make it where it's a spectacle. These artists and philosophers and everyone have been talking about this the industrial revolution, the capitalistic regime, the global domination. It's a spectacle at this point, and we're all just like clowns in it. So let's have some fucking fun. Let's go and do the good work that we have been sent to do on this place. We're here in this very important time for a very specific reason, and it is our job to figure it out and do it. And no one else is going to do it for us because it's our job. And it takes a whole ecosystem of people to be doing crazy things in their own niche, and we're all tugging on the threads of this structure that's trying to like keep us down. But we're going to get out. 100%. We're going to get out. We're going to work together to do it. We have to have strategy, but we're going to do it.
And I think that's the most important thing, because when you spoke about grief and you spoke about anger and shame coming up, I think obviously I'm sure you've experienced this maybe in your own personal self and in your work, is that when the anger and shame comes up, anger itself is not a bad thing, but when it blocks the logic and your ability to strategize, that's when it becomes detrimental, not only to the individual but to the cause, because without strategy we're just like dogs chasing our tail. You know what I mean? Just reacting to every single thing that the system is doing. And a lot of times, as you know, a lot of things they're doing just to play with us. They're putting stuff out just to mess with us, just to get us riled up and act of emotion. And we do. And now they're distracting us with something else.
Yep.
Right? So
it's a roller coaster.
It's a roller coaster. I love that. So if you could, one thing I love that you do, I've been to a couple of your fires. I've been to a couple of gardens with you. And one thing that you do here in Western Queens is you give honor to the land, to the people, to the natives who occupied the land before you, right? How important is that, and where did that come from? As if I'm wrong, you identify as a white male.
Yeah, well, I do. I'm my last name's Lopez. My dad and his family are brown Chicanos, and I do see myself as half Chicano. And that's the only I love the culture, and I love my people, my family, and I do. People see me as white. It's interesting. Whenever we started using email, and people would just hear my name, they would assume that I was Latino or Chicano or something, but I'm not. So or I am. Depending, I definitely know how to coach. I definitely feel like I've lived on the edge of both worlds for a long time. So that has also affected who I am, what I do, and the decisions that I make a lot, because I do feel like I understand a lot of these issues that a lot of white people don't get straight out the gate. So because I got those at a younger age, and I kind of like assess my own privilege before we were talking about privilege, because of the color of my skin and where I grew up, but then also visiting my dad in LA every few summers or so. I don't know, that was a very formative thing for me, thinking about who I am and my personal identity. And a lot of what I know about personal racial politics or all of this stuff I've learned from undoing racism classes and from folks that are teaching or videos and stuff and reading and stuff like that. So I definitely have my own understanding of who I am, but I also have a further analysis of what society thinks I am and how I can portray myself in order to wield change, like lay low or whatever. And we all and that's why it's important for us to know where we are and the structures that we're in, and try to work effectively with whatever skills and talents or powers or privilege that we're given to bring about change, because it's not going to be handed to us.
Powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And just as someone who's known you for about 5 years now, I think before the pandemic we met like 2018, 2017. Shout out to Erica De Jesus, right? Introduced us with the composting and things like that. I've noticed that you've done that. That's one of the reasons I do love you and respect you. Is that I think I've seen you in subtle ways. Like affirm that, recognizing your skin color, recognizing the privilege, but also holding extreme tightly to like your dad's lineage, you know what I mean? And where I think like is a human started from, right? Like the original people, natural people, like we are one with the earth, right? And so like whatever I identify as or whatever you see me as, I'm here and I'm fighting for what's right, right? And I think it's your mindset and your heart that really separates you from not only the average human, but as you mentioned, the average, white people who may not grasp it as much. And so just thank you for that, for holding true to the true principles of humanity, right? Because ultimately that's what it is. You're holding true to humanity. There's nothing to do with an ethnicity or race or cultures. I'm a human being and this is our planet, we're here and we got to do as much as we can to protect it and preserve it and to heal it and to nurture it, right? So you mentioned something earlier about the Amazon. The Amazon is, can you talk about the detriment, right, that cutting down the Amazon, the fires in the Amazon that is doing to us on a global scale? Because some people still think, oh, that's over there. That's over there. It's happening over there. But can you speak about how what's happening in the Amazon rainforest is affecting all of us everywhere?
Well, how all of us everywhere are affecting what's happening in the Amazon is that we love beef. So they're cutting down the forest so they can graze cattle. So our meat desires and cravings and habits and addictions are really pushing what's happening in the Amazon. And what's happening is a fascist-like dictator had taken over for a long time, Bolsonaro, and he was getting rid of all the indigenous protectors of the land who lived on the land in respectful ways and managed those forests that in a way that they could live in, which supported the trees and the entire forest ecosystem. Because we're not a virus on this planet. Humans are not a virus. It's the systems that we in the first worlds live under that is the virus. And third world nations know how to live on land in really respectful ways, and we need to let them do it. So as those forests are being cut down and they get burned, it's called cut and slash. They cut it down, they burn it, they use the char as the fertilizer to get the grass growing, and then they bring cattle out and it stamps down the soil and compacts it, and then it becomes all crazy. And the trees are a carbon sink. The soil is the carbon sink. When the trees have deep roots and tall trunks and lots of leaves, they're sucking up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and they're putting it into the soil, and they're creating fertile soil, which actually takes that carbon dioxide and puts it deep within the earth. And this is new science that's coming out. We thought that trees stored the stuff in their leaves primarily and their trunks, and when the trunks fall and the leaves fall, and everything was on the top layer, but that's not what's happening. It's storing the carbon deep within the earth. And this is one of the reasons I love compost, because it's one of the biggest things that we can do in the city to reduce the amount of carbon that's going into the atmosphere based on a simple lifestyle change. where you save your organics instead of putting it in a landfill where it will decompose with all the other trash and turn into a toxic sludge. You and release methane and other greenhouse gases. Um, you can put the food scraps through a process of composting and it turns into rich organic soil, which feeds the plants in a very natural way, feeds the biology, and becomes the building block of everything on our carbon-based life form planet.
Yep.
So that
Powerful.
when we put the carbon in the right place, we begin to heal the harm that's caused by ripping it out of the earth and burning it so that we can go fast and furious. We need to be
Powerful.
slow and compassionate.
So it's the old adage, right? The tortoise and the hare, and then there's also the old. I think it's like a metaphor, like the old bull and the young bull, right? On the top of the hill, and the young bull is like, "Yo, I want to run down there, and f all of the the other animals down there." And the old bull is like, they're gonna run away if you go slow and steady. You can catch each one, right? So that's related to that. But it just
Yeah.
reminds me that slow and steady wins the race, right? I want to ask you though, because again, like these are different layers that you're developing. These are different layers, right? Like, there's one thing to fight for the protection of the water. There's one thing to fight for the protection of the land. There's one thing to honor the land and to garden, right? But now composting is a different layer. At what point did you know that composting was important, and how did you make that show? How did you add that part to your work?
When I left, right, I got laid off from two different design firms in Orlando 2 years before 2018, and I mean 2008 and 2006. I got laid off. In 2008, I got laid off from another one, and I would just like was working at the Home Depot in a restaurant, and I started volunteering with a nonprofit that did a bunch of permaculture work, and would go out and help them uh, with this. I helped them build stuff and do whatever they needed. But it was when I really looked at the natural systems in a more holistic way. And it wasn't then, it was like, that's when it got reaffirmed in my adult life. But because I had learned about some of this stuff, the whole ecosystem stuff, and I know that the soil life is really what drives everything on our earth. So really diving back into it, like losing my job and just like going back to that. Also, my marriage fell apart. Like the house was about to get foreclosed, blah, blah, blah. And just like reassessing everything and trying to figure out where to spend my time and finding an organization that was really talking about things that mattered to me. And yeah, it just got it back in my head. Like, oh yeah, I need to focus more on the soil and compost. I need to grow some food, and I need to grow some trees that are going to be longevity. So I started all that in Orlando, and then I moved up here and kind of started doing it up here immediately too.
Nice, powerful. So let's talk about that, right? Coming to New York, I know that you and your crew, I think it was Big Reuse or NYC Compost Project, right? I think you was with them at the time. How difficult has it been to get New York City composting, right? I know they've made progress in the last few years, but how difficult has that journey been? And like, why do you think it's so difficult to get the city to really enforce more compost education, more compost sites, and everything related to that?
That's such a tricky question. I mean, like, compost seems to have become a political football, and that's the way I saw it before Mayor Adams, and I still see it as a political football. And he decided that he's gonna like run with it. He just grabbed it and he's like, this is the football. I'm gonna do what footballers do, and he seems to be doing it. He's getting it on. The city council's in full support. They just passed the zero waste bill package, which is going to mandate compost starting in 2024, I believe, after all the boroughs get the brown bins, which the mayor implemented earlier this year. He laid out a plan for, Queens already has it, Brooklyn and I think the Bronx are next, and then it's going to be Staten Island and Manhattan, I think, by the end of October next year. And then the following year it'll all be mandated, and folks will have to do it, just like we have to recycle right now.
Powerful.
So it's all coming, like how it's implemented, where the food scraps are actually composted at, all that's like kind of being debated on the like other levels of, compost world
Mhm.
back chatter, all those people, the trash nerds, amongst us.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Got it. Got it. I'm gonna ask you a question about recycling, right? So, something that bothered me a few years ago in Queensbridge, right? Queensbridge, projects where I'm from, where my mom still lives, right? They have the green bins, right? They have the green bins that have two separate entrances, right? Where you're supposed to put your cardboard, your stuff over here, your plastics
Yeah.
over here. However, what I noticed was that when they take it out, they put it all in the same place,
Yeah.
right? So I had a question. Me and some of my friends was like, "Is the city really recycling, or are they just saying they are?" Because if you put all the trash in the same place, how and you don't all in the same dumpster, like, I want
Yeah.
like, is the city really recycling or not?
To be honest with you, the city overall does, but the NYCHA system, the everything from the police and the trash and like everything within NYCHA is like its own little world. And I
Mhm.
can't really tell you who their contractors are. I don't know if it's the private contractors or if it's DSNY. I think it's DSNY.
DSNY, 100% DSNY.
So if it goes in a recycling dumpster, then they have New York City has like some of the world's best cycle sorting going
Okay,
on at these the recycling facility in
okay,
Sunset Park. I took a tour of it last year. It was freaking awesome. It's kind of beautiful too.
nice.
They like they have different rollers that separate out this and that, and then they have
Oh,
these air jet machines that blow plastic. They have a scanner that figures out what number plastic is, inside the little triangle,
yeah,
and
yeah.
blows the plastic and makes it jump up and catches off the thing whenever it changes or something.
Okay,
It's wild.
okay,
But they do a good job of sorting
oh,
the recyclables. They
okay.
are supposed to pre-sort the metal, glass, plastic away from the paper and cardboard, but
Mhm.
if it's not, it ends up getting sorted anyway.
Okay,
Even if
okay,
you have some a little food waste on your plastic yogurt container or whatever, your Dixie plate, you know it's still gonna get sorted.
okay. Thank you for that. Because again, like I was like, man, like because I do it. Obviously, I recycle. I recycle in Queensbridge before I was trying to push my mom and them to recycle. But then when people started pointing that out, I was like, damn, right? Like, am
Yeah.
I am I following an agenda that isn't really, what I mean, like happening the way we think it's happening?
there's
So
there's hiccups sometimes, and like there'll be like a headline to be like, oh, the power went out and they didn't compost anything, and or like whatever happens. It's like kind of the snow, they threw all the recycling away, and then people kind of use that as an excuse to like not give a fuck anymore for the
yeah,
next couple weeks, and then it becomes a month or two, and then nobody just
yeah,
gives a fuck anymore. And
yeah,
then so we all have kind of a civic responsibility because it costs a lot of money. It's our taxpayer money that like when we have to have like 3 patrols of people picking up the trash around our place, that's like less money that could be spent on something else.
yep.
So we all have like a civic responsibility just to care for our own surroundings and our community and hold each other in a good way. But the city also has a responsibility to provide responsible stewardship of the trash and waste whenever they're picking it up. So
Mhm.
that can be a problem if you have like people that are working, and maybe they feel entitled to their job, and then maybe they're just snoozing on the job and they fuck around. You can call 311 and be like, hey, this doesn't seem right. Just like
Mm.
mention it. You can do it anonymously. Like
Mhm. Mm.
let people know. That's the best
Yeah,
way because as fucked up as the government is, like they don't know it unless we let them know.
that's a
And we
fact.
got and it doesn't take and like if there's not a lot of people calling and being like, "Hey, something's fucked up," and then there's a rally, and then we're like, "There was this many fucking phone calls about this shit. Why is it still fucking happening?"
Yep.
Then it becomes a dialogue, and where it's that ecology, whole ecosystem of tactics,
Yep.
where someone is more comfortable looking out their window being like, that's weird, I'm gonna just I'm gonna complain about that, and then somebody else is like, going to notice it over and over and over again and not say anything and then get pissed off and yell at somebody. But when they come together is the real, and then somebody's going to be like writing about it in the newspaper, and they're going to be like, and this many people reported, and this many people showed up to the demo, and everybody plays their part, and we make a move. It might not be like we didn't collapse the whole, Babylon at once, but in the process, some like skin privileged white dude like got trained on direct action and figures out how to engage with the cops, and like maybe he shows up to a Black Lives Matter thing and he ends up being the front line between people who are in their rage and cops who are ready to fuck them up just because of the color of their skin, so it kind of like, it doesn't, I don't know if it'll come out in the wash. I'm still waiting to see. I don't know if I'll live long enough to full unfolding, but I think it's interesting to just keep on pushing things forward, and we live in tension. So let's engage with it and like grapple, like let's wrestle,
Let's wrestle. I love that. Let's wrestle. Absolutely.
Yeah, down on the dirt. Let's get dirty. Come on. Roll our sleeves up. Let's get into it.
100%. I love
that. Because they're going to throw it at us. They're going to throw it at us. By the time we get done with this conversation, there's going to be another tragedy in the national news, and everybody's going to be, oh yeah, that. But we got to focus on our block by block, row by row. We got to make the gardens grow. We got to make the community strong. We got to build dual power. We got to get into the economics. We're definitely into the social part of it because that's who we are. We got to get into the politics. We can be anarchists all day long, but we still have to agitate or educate because we live under their thing. We can be socialists. You can be whoever you want to be, but understand where we are now. Engage, especially if you're not going to vote. If you're not going to vote, you better be on the streets.
Absolutely.
Don't be passive and then passive. Don't be passive. Be
passive.
Like take it light on the democracy if that's not what you're into, but show up. And that goes both ways too. If you're gonna vote, then educate the people who you just elected into office. Make sure they know what's important to you. Go and show up and call them. But any way you can, like, let them know.
Oh, powerful. It's something you said earlier about the soil. When I was in farm school 2013, 2014, just learning about soils, reading a book, Healthy Soil, Healthy Communities. Well, not a book, but I think one of our facilitators was a professor at Cornell. He came down and spoke about it, right? And I remember creating a whole workshop, Healthy Soils, Healthy Communities, right? And they said, I remember getting a book, The Soil Will Save Us, right? And so it was like, as the health of the soil goes, so goes the health of the people, right? Not just because of the food that may be growing that we eat, but just because heat rises. So if the soil is healthy and the heat is rising, we are breathing that in. We are breathing in more healthier air, as opposed to if the soil is toxic and you live in a community in an area where the soil is extremely toxic, you're also breathing that in. So it's no wonder why literally people's brains are not right. People are out of their minds. Like we say that as a joke, but it's real. People are literally not in their right minds because of they could do all of the right things, but because they're breathing in toxic air quality is going to be detrimental no matter how strong you think you are, right? Let me ask you, from your perspective, right? You're doing a library education, you're doing the stuff in the gardens. What more needs to happen on the educational level to get people to understand the importance of composting, the importance of land protection, the importance of what's happening with the water, the importance of all of these different things that we spoke about today and even more? What more needs to happen educationally? And how do we as a people, myself, you, and the people who we know who really care, how do we begin to facilitate that?
I think everything we do, we just got to go outside and do it. And then figure out what we can do outside that we're not already doing. We got to really get comfortable with the outside. And, I think being in the world, whether that's, gardens in every school, whether that's, having kids go on a lot of different outdoor, they're going kayaking one week and they're going on a hike and then they're going to the farm and then they're going to go to the park and they're going to go bird watching and they're going to, the horse thing and they're going to pick out, get outside, find out where your food comes from, find out where your fresh air comes from, find out where clean water comes from, you know, we have to really have empathy for all of these these healing medicinal elements,
Mm,
and have compassion for everything that supports us, because we aren't jack shit
mm,
without food, water, air, you know.
right.
So why are we so dominating, and treat them so terribly, like
Mm,
we're better than them? Because we're not. We're made of them.
oh, 100%.
So we really, I think we really have to like break it down to get people outside. Nature is not something you can teach in a classroom. It's not something that you can experience without being in it. And in the city, we don't have as many places to get in it. So we really have to create those places and prioritize young people having access to them in structured and unstructured ways.
Yes,
Like
sir.
there's this book that Richard Louv, The Last Child in the Forest, about nature deficit disorder, which is, I'm not really into pathologizing, but like there's this idea that like if you don't get enough of that good soil, if you don't get enough of those antioxidants coming from the trees,
Mm,
if you don't touch the soil and breathe it in and get that bacteria that helps you produce serotonin and oxytocin in your body and the antibodies for your immunity, if you don't get all these things, then you become a little bit paranoid, you become a little bit recluse, and it changes your epigenetics possibly, you know, so that over time and generations, you become more disconnected from the natural world, and you learn to forget where we came from. So that's a lot, you know, and it's hard to drop that on people just like boom. So you get into it slowly by like finding what it is about, because everybody's going to respond to nature in a different way. Some people are going to be icked out by that. Some people are going to be like, oh, I love that texture, you know,
right.
and some people are going to like love looking at things, and some people are going to want to ride the horse, you
Mm,
know. So we have to give people a broad experience of ways to connect, and let them connect in the ways that feel that they can. And I think that's the number one thing that we have to do in terms of education.
no, that's incredible. And I got like stuck just now because you speaking about, those who are engaged in nature from young, and then those who may not be, and how they may be a little more recluse and a little more, dealing with anxiety and things like that. It made me think about my own childhood, right? Me and my friends, some of us, traveled, and some of us, went hiking, and some of us went to, sleepaway camp. I stayed in Pennsylvania every summer from age 6 to 11, with the McConnell family through Fresh Air Fun program. And it was in nature, I learned about horses and chickens, and it was water, lakes, ponds, and they had acres of forest behind the house. And so, and the other, my other friends who did, we're pretty similar now as adults, very expressive, very creative, very in tune with our emotions. And when I think about some of my friends who did not get that experience, they are completely opposite. They are absolutely more recluse as adults, even now, right? They are absolutely more emotionally responsive to things as opposed to being reflective. They deal with more anxiety, a little more depression, maybe, a little more even addiction, right? Like, although I've had my times when I drank a lot of alcohol and I ate too much of the wrong foods, but I also always knew that nature was my safe place. I also knew that I had a safe space outside of anything that I could put in my body. If I go by the water, if I go sit under a tree, if I go to the park and take my shoes off, that will ground me. That will bring me some level of peace, some level of calm. As opposed to there's some people who they won't do that at all. And if they do it, it's for like a barbecue. They go to the parks only for a barbecue or only for an event, and they don't really take their shoes off because they're not, not comfortable with the texture and things like that. And I just
Yeah.
noticed that, and it's crazy that you point that out.
We're all at our level, man. You know, everybody has their way of disconnecting with the world, man, because we live in it. You know, a lot of people, you know, I'm a creative, you're a creative. We have pretty flexible lifestyles. You know, some people work a grind 9 to 5, and
Yeah.
they're not going on a hike. You know, if they can get out into the park and enjoy that with some music and their friends and some food or whatever, that's good. If we can, if they can make some lifestyle choices, maybe to compost, maybe they don't quit eating meat quite yet, but
Mhm.
it's these little steps. I talk about thresholds, going over like because we can get like so overwhelmed with everything that's wrong that we're like, fuck it, man, I'm just gonna keep on like
Yeah. Do
going after
nothing.
the new model car and trying to, stay up with the Joneses or whatever the fuck we do in our lifestyle of consumption here in the United States of corporations. It's crazy. So and a lot of people do it, and we're not even talking to the suburbs, and maybe we are. What's up, suburbs? How y'all doing? And rural folks, I doubt y'all are on the line, but like, there's a lot of different people living lots of different ways in the United States, much less the world. But us folks in the city, we got it bad. We got it bad. The corporations are here, and they're here to stay, and they have the billboards everywhere in front of our face. They
Yep.
own the buildings and the land. They own the water in the bottles. They own the food on the shelves, and you're just like putting it through your body as like part of a kind of like farming machine. If food stamps, SNAP benefits were created to get people to be able to buy food, producing seeds and plants to grow themselves out of hunger. But we don't even have land anymore to do that.
Yeah.
New York City used to have an agricultural based curriculum in their schools, and all
Yep.
the schools had gardens, and kids grew tons of crops during the summertime, and they like were feeding people. It was a thing, and they were still learning, and they were enjoying it. And we had to make way for the high rises and the people that don't have kids and the people that aren't even real people. Those corporations push everything around, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Yo, I appreciate you. Gil, in 3 minutes or less, man, tell me some things you have coming up that you're excited about, in the next few days, few weeks, few months. What do you have coming up personally that excites you that you're looking forward to?
Oh man, well, I'm going to Detroit in a few weeks. I'm going to go
Okay.
to the Social Ecology Institute for Social Ecology's summer intensive at
Nice.
the Grace and James Lee Boggs Center for Community Leadership.
Nice.
Uh, and I'm really excited about that. It's about a Black liberation, political education. We're going to be visiting Black-led cooperatives, urban farms, people building dual power in Detroit. And we're going to have a lot of speakers coming around from around the nation. The fellow from Jackson Rising, no, Cooperation Jackson. I'm excited about it. And then this weekend, shoot, I'm doing something tomorrow. I can't even remember. I'm so hyped up about this interview here. I try to live in the moment. You know what I'm saying?
Sir, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So tomorrow I have I'm going to be teaching at the Astoria Branch Library. I'm going to be having some young children after school programming, and we're going to be talking about trees, and we're going to be making seed balls, and we're going to talk about wildflowers and seeds. So that should be a lot of fun. And there's all sorts of stuff coming up. People can check out my Instagram at Lopez Says. And I have a little link tree on there that I usually put all these events on.
Spell Glopez for us.
Glopezez.
Hold on.
It's my first initial G, Lopez, and then
Glopezez.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Like that. G Lopez says.
That's me.
Lopez says. Check him out on Instagram. And so lastly, brother, if you have some words of encouragement, some words of inspiration, some words of education, any last words you would like to leave with the viewers who will tune into this interview?
Like, educate yourself and move forward with confidence, and don't be scared to mess up, because we're going to mess up. And then but be sure to take notes along the way and learn some lessons and take them with you, and then move forward with confidence again. Even though you might have stumbled and looked like a fool last time, just pick up, brush your shoulders off, but don't be stubborn about it. Try to make sure you're listening to feedback when people tell you things. Take things in, and try to walk in a good way, one step at a time. You'll end up somewhere beautiful if you really put good intention into it.
That's powerful. Thank you for that. And I just want to add that one of the common themes so far in all of the interviews that I've done is confidence. People having confidence in themselves, people having confidence, in their work, in their mission, having trust that, in their creator, whether they say God or, the universe, where they come from, they have confidence and trust that as long as I walk in the good way and put one step in front of the other, no matter how long it takes, I'm going to get there. And I think personally, that's one of the things I'm really excited about the world, is that as the whole world changes and shifts on every level, people are stepping out on faith. People are not letting their failures define them. People are not, letting a loss. People are not letting any opposition stop them. A lot of people are like, nah, we're gonna make this happen one way or another. Whether it's something that's, not politically correct, or something that's along the lines of the structure, right? And so, I'm proud of you for also operating in that way. Because some of the things you've done, some of the guerrilla gardening, and just some of the things you've done to ensure that, communities have gardens, communities have, the ability to compost. It was not always approved. It was not always right and exact, but it was right and exact in terms of it needed to be done. And you still did it because you knew that it needed to be done. And some things we can't take no for an answer, right? We just got to get it done by any means necessary, because not only do we as people need it, the earth needs it. Our animal relatives and our plant relatives need it, right? So thank you for what I call being a revolutionary activist, right? A revolutionary activist all of the ways, a revolutionary farmer, a revolutionary composter, a revolutionary educator. Because even what you're teaching the children, I'm sure there's some people somewhere who don't want those children to learn those things, right? There's some people they can stop it.
It's simple, but we encourage critical thinking. I encourage critical thinking. And I will say this, based on what you just said, if it's the right thing to do, we have every right to do it. So let's reclaim the commons and cultivate community, and we can be awesome, not perfect.
Yes, sir. Yo, thank you for your time. Thank you for all the work that you've done, all the work that you do, all the work that you will continue to do to make our communities, our city, our state, and our world a better place. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you. Yo, everybody, this is your boy, LaShawn Sugar Ray Marston, host of the Sugar Ray Show, wrapping up another phenomenal episode with the wonderful, passionate, committed environmental protector, environmental educator, land and water protector, urban farmer, educator, and all of those things, Brother Gil Lopez, here in New York City, doing all the work that needs to be done. Yo, as always, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. We all we got, but we all we need. Peace.